going to go very quickly through, I think from a fintech trends perspective and from an entrepreneurship perspective, you guys did a great job. I have nothing to say more. But I thought that I would maybe talk more about the VC industry in Lebanon, more particularly Phoenician Fund 1, which is a VC that is very much interested in fintech, and we've done a few investments of which Risk Plus Solutions, and talk about our very high level strategy and the Circular 331, who we are, etc. So basically, Phoenician Fund 1 is a fund that was initially established in December 2015 and backed by Circular 331. And so we have been approved by the central bank then, and we started our operations in beginning of 2016. And as you know, as Jad mentioned, Circular 331 is basically a circular that made myself and colleagues of mine come back to Lebanon, and we were both actually working in the UAE with McKinsey, and before that in banking in London. And we were actually crazy enough and passionate enough to come back to Lebanon and to do something here. And this was an opportunity for us to really use our skills and launch Phoenician Fund 1. Phoenician Fund 1 very quickly is roughly a $30 million fund. We invest in fintech primarily. We do invest in other sectors opportunistically on a co-investment basis as well. Our stage is more focused on seed. So we were actually among the first VC fund in Lebanon to focus purely on seed stage. And we have the appetite to go in early and to help entrepreneurs co-shape their strategy, co-shape their value proposition, find the right market, find the right problem to solve, and guide them through the process and throughout the investment life cycle. And we've done that with a few opportunities that we can talk about later on. We, as 331, we are interested as of now in companies that are incorporated in Lebanon. However, these companies can actually go and create products for markets that are outside, and this is what we usually look for: a product not to be only relevant in Lebanon, but to be relevant in large markets, be it in the region or outside the region, Europe, as an example, as mentioned by Paul. So we do have that in mind. We usually invest in equity, so we take shares. This is because also the Circular 331 has a bit of limitation when it comes to convertible notes, so we're only allowed to bridge for a year. So typically we look for equity investments. Our ticket sizes are range between $500,000 and $2.5 million and $2.5 million. And this is including actually follow-on and tranches. A lot of entrepreneurs and stakeholders ask us, why do you actually go up to 2.5 million as a seed stage fund? We tell them that when we look at an investment opportunity, we seed the investment, but we also look to fund it and follow on the investment based on milestones and KPIs that we agree on with the founders. So this is basically, in a nutshell, Phoenician Fund 1. Now, a good question would be, what do we look for actually when we do an investment? And this is something that we, of course, we have the typical framework of team, problem that the opportunity solves, the differentiating factors, the market size, and the value proposition, the product, etc. But more importantly, I believe that, and going back to what some of our colleagues were saying, is really to find a problem and take it as a challenge to solve it, even though a lot of people around you will say, you know, you're crazy, you're solving that problem, no one solved it before. But I think this is what makes a company successful, is really to look for opportunities where, where you have the will, the passion, and the motivation to deliver and to address these challenges. And this is what really makes a difference, is when you see some things others don't, or you have an execution capability that others don't have, and you can deliver on that promise. And this is, this is not easy. And as investors, given that we are in risk capital, so we understand the various stages a company should go through, the different prioritizations that it should have, and also coming from an advisory and consulting background, it was not very easy for us in the beginning, because we're used to a very organized environment, to really look at things that way. But I think very quickly we understood that these are things that one should be aware of, at least from an investor and from an entrepreneur perspective. Now, what our team really, so our team is basically a combination of entrepreneurs, investment professionals, and advisors. So we have people that sit on our investment committee that are serial entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, and exited multiple companies to the likes of Oracle and Dropbox. We have another that was based in New York, and now is managing a $500 million fund, also has a very strong technical background, and exited also many companies, various companies, one of them to Motorola. We have also investment professionals in the region to allow us to get the regional lens around the market insights, the access, and the networking. And so it's kind of a combination of both, and this is actually very useful for us, because at the seed stage you really need also to have all these elements in place to make sure that you actually create value and you add value to the various teams. So any question on the Phoenician Fund 1, on the strategy? Yes, so what we do is that we invest in fintech companies, so we provide capital and we help them grow. So given that we are at very early stages and seed stage, so our job is also to help them develop the capabilities that they need to grow to the next and to become attractive to the next stage and to the next level potentially, and potentially to have an attractive exit. So we're kind of double-headed in a way. So we do provide capital, and we do also provide support. Support includes, from a product perspective, technical support, technology, access to markets, to insights, even from a regulatory perspective, we do have a lot of capability where we can really help in shaping the right opportunities, or in kind of being eligible for certain markets. So here is an example of some of the investments that we have done so far. So we've done so the first 3 were actually announced. The other 2 are being finalized as we speak. So we've done investments in InsurTech, in a payment solution, and also with Risk Plus, and we're now doing 2 others, one in usage-based insurance, and the other is actually a digitization of a credit process for banks. So if you look at the portfolio, so basically we do have a lot of or many companies that service banks, and in this part of the world, and even now in Europe, you see more and more collaboration between fintechs and banks with the need to digitize, and with the disruptors that are unbundling the banking services. The banks are now very aggressive and have the digital agenda to be able to address these threats. So we are, the themes that we have are basically RegTech, infrastructure, including core banking systems, digital banking systems, compliance, and InsurTech as well. Now, if you look at other, and payments is one also key vertical in the region to service the unbanked and to make payments easier and more optimal for e-commerce and others payment methods. From a peer-to-peer lending, We haven't seen yet lots of opportunities, at least in Lebanon, due to regulatory challenges. And on the wealth management side as well, now we're starting to see more companies emerging. But we believe that these are, in the region, in Europe and the US, these are kind of now have been there for 4 or 5 years, and they're moving more into the RegTech and the InsurTech, etc. Here in the region, it's kind of the reverse, and this is what we expect to see going forward. Now, if we look a little bit, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this since already it was covered. But basically, fintech has a lot of momentum today from an investment perspective globally, and this is across various verticals, including payments and lending. InsurTech just started 2 years ago, actually. Before that, it wasn't that sexy. But you see more and more opportunities there with the need of insurance companies to digitize their process, and a lot of other companies that are disrupting the way insurance premiums are priced, distributed through digital channels. So it's a very hot sector as we speak. With the growth of wealth tech also is something that we've seen globally, with the robo-advisors, the likes of Robinhood, Betterment. And this is something that also has been very successful and growing quite significantly by providing access to capital markets with a very cheap cost enabled by technology. And we have other underlying technologies also and functions, including data and analytics, blockchain, that can be used for settlement and clearing, and that is being used actually with Bitcoin as we speak. And you can see that the price of Bitcoin has significantly increased in the past week. Artificial intelligence also is being used for personal finance management, for example. So you see companies like Digit in the US, where they transfer money from one account to the other based on your spending behavior, and they select actually the account that pays the most in terms of interest and that has the lowest fees. So it's all based on AI, it's all based on a chatbot, and it's a solution an example of a solution that is using artificial intelligence. Even banks and insurance companies are starting also to look into that to service their customers and for product selection and for pricing, etc. So these are the key trends and the key verticals where the investment is going now. Just to mention something, that the RegTech is starting also to be one of the major verticals, but it's still very at an early stage as we speak. But we were actually in New York in June, and we attended a fintech conference organized by CB Insights, and they were saying actually the trend now is going more to RegTech and compliance and using technology for KYCs, AML, risk management, and managing the risk and regulation. So this is also a hot sector that potentially will be part of that list in the next few years. Now, more specifically in the region, and in the MENA region, what will drive actually, and where do we expect fintech to be in the next 5 years? And basically, the problems in the region from a fintech perspective, where fintech can play a major role, other than supporting the banks to develop their own systems, is basically you have a huge population that is actually unbanked. And this is, it started in Africa to find solutions like M-Pesa to enable payments and banking. And now in the region, this is something that when you compare to developed countries, this is something that can be actually enabled by fintech. The second trend that we see is on the SME side, and there's a huge gap when it comes to SME lending. And it's estimated at around 160 to 180 billion. And when you look at SMEs, actually, the risk-adjusted return for a bank or for a financier is among the highest in the world, and it has been proven across markets. So it is a very attractive also opportunity, or to find, as you said, like a problem and then solve it, and this is something that can be also looked at. With of course, the obvious one is e-commerce, and the expected growth in e-commerce is also one of the opportunities where fintech can play a big role. And also from a banking perspective, now with the millennials and the young populations across the region, there is also a need to come up with better services for banks or alternatives like digital banks. Now in the region we haven't seen any digital bank yet for regulatory reasons, but more and more we hear that you have setups that are being developed, and we hope that through the sandboxes and the initiatives of the that started in the GCC, like in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, or Bahrain, it will allow some of these to actually launch. And definitely the regulation that is shifting. Again, if you go back to the sandboxes that you have in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, where you can have a temporary license to launch a product, and this is something that is very new, and we hope that in Lebanon something similar will happen. We've had a few discussions with the regulator. Now it's in Lebanon by nature, the regulator is very prudent for obvious reasons, but I think there is also an appetite and a will to do something on the fintech side, to leverage the capabilities that we have in Lebanon, and the talent and the banking know-how as well. And you have other regulations like in Egypt for mobile banking solutions. Now Saudi Arabia is also launching a new regulation on payments. So it is kind of, you have that momentum, everyone sees it. Now the challenge is, from a regulatory perspective, is to make sure that compliance is there, that you have all the elements in place to fight terrorism financing, anti-money laundering, etc., data security. So every time you go, we talk to a regulator. These are the major constraints that the challenges that they want to make sure to address. And also, if you look at from a macro perspective, and you talk to governors of central banks, for example, they always also want to make sure that it doesn't disrupt the actual banking system, which is a bit counterintuitive. But from a regulatory lens, or from a monetary authority lens, they don't want fintech to be used as a pretext to fire, for example, employees, or to disrupt a whole system, because you have a lot of vested interest from governments and the likes. Now, in terms of fintech ventures, so definitely there is a lot of growth, mostly coming from the payment side, in the number of companies, and it's expected actually to be to at least double by 2020. And in terms of countries, I think Lebanon is kind of, represents 14%. It's mostly in the UAE where it's happening today, due to the initiatives that they are launching to facilitate the operations of a fintech company. Now these are just very, some examples of regional fintech companies on the payment side. So you have PinPay, PayTabs, NimCard, and others. From a wealth management and digital banking, you also have a few companies that are operating and trying to serve banks to have an appealing digital banking offering. Remittances is also something that since we in the region we have a lot of expatriates and blue collar workers, so a lot of remittances systems are being developed and making it cheaper and much more efficient. InsurTech is also something that is developing quite nicely. It's mostly now on the digital distribution side, through aggregators or through insurance or through insurance for or micro insurance or insurance for expatriates as well and workers. On the lending, it's still very nascent. Some companies are trying to crack the market and make it Sharia compliant. So it is also expected to be an attractive vertical soon.